So yesterday I was on a coaching call with one of my most badass students. Now, truthfully, all my students are badasses. I'm very selective with who I choose to work with. I only work with people who are already crushing it, and I know for certain I can help take them to the next level. But this guy in particular, his name's Wyatt. He's in his mid-20s, and he's already got like $15 million of real estate under his belt. He's got a property management company. He's just crushing it. But he's getting to the point now where he wants to expand beyond real estate. He wants to start building out his personal brand and start creating some sales funnels to different products that he can sell to, whether that's a mastermind or coaching other young entrepreneurs. And I think he'd be great at it. But one of the things that we got on the topic of was putting out content on social media. Because, this video, like this podcast, this is a form of social media in a way, like we're engaging. But so many people have access to infinite free distribution that these social media platforms enable us to have. And yet so few people are actually taking advantage of that. So the fact that I can get on Instagram right now, I can make a reel and it can reach 1 million people. Or the fact that I could make a YouTube video and it can reach 1 million people, or go on TikTok and that can reach 1 million people. Like, that is unfathomable for our grandparents to even conceive of. To reach 1 million people before, you would have needed to have access to one of the largest newspapers in the world, or to one of the big 4 cable networks, right? Like, or a radio show. It would have been very, very difficult. The barriers to entry would have been immense. And yet for us, every single person with a phone and like an email can go and sign up and do this. And then if you're putting out quality content that resonates and adds value to people's lives, then you can build a very big audience. But most people don't do this. And one of the reasons why most people don't do this, in talking with Wyatt, is they struggle with this imposter syndrome, this feeling that I don't really have any value to add, or like, what gives me the right to share my story, when the truth is that regardless of where you are on your journey, you're likely always to feel like an imposter. You're likely to always feel like, I don't really have it figured out. You might look at, say, me, for example, and think like, oh, he's got it all figured out. He's got hundreds of thousands of subscribers on YouTube and like these successful businesses. And the truth is, every single day I wake up and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Just kind of muddle my way through it, just like I did 10 years ago when I first started on this journey. Now it's just the numbers are bigger. But I still don't necessarily know what I'm doing. And so that fear, that imposter syndrome, holds a lot of people back, because they're like, well, I don't want to put out content because then people will call me out. They'll be like, you're not really an expert on this. So they'll see through the facade. And on the one hand, I'm against the idea of faking it till you make it. I don't think that's good advice, because you can fool everybody else, but you're not going to fool the person that matters most, and that is you. And the truth is, like, your self-esteem is the reputation that you have with yourself. And so if you're out there presenting yourself as one thing on social media and the internet, but then internally you don't feel like that's true, well, then you're living a lie, and that's going to catch up with you. So yeah, you can fool other people for a time, but the most important person is not going to be fooled. And so I think better is to actually go and live in alignment with the person that you're trying to become, and own your strengths and your weaknesses and your shortcomings. For many of you, you came probably to this podcast because you engaged with some of my other content, perhaps on YouTube. You saw a video, and one of the messages that I get so frequently from people is what they resonate the most with my story and like what I share isn't like, oh, Anthony, you're so brilliant, and like you share these strategies and these insights around business and life and entrepreneurship that nobody else has ever had. Like, truthfully, I don't really have that many original insights. The thing that people connect with are the unique struggles and vulnerabilities that I have as an individual. So that's my ADHD. It's the fact that my fiance dumped me, and the fact that I was in massive debt, and that I wasn't living in alignment with the greatness that I felt that I had inside. And it took me a really long time to feel comfortable enough in my own skin to be able to share those stories with the world, because they still hurt in a lot of ways, those stories. And so opening those vulnerabilities to the world means that the world has the ability to continue to poke that wound, or to hurt you deeper. But I think it's through that exposing of your vulnerabilities that then people see themselves in you, and they resonate, they connect. And when you share from that perspective of just trying to connect and add value and not necessarily trying to impress, but simply to express, then you can start to form a ravenous audience of people who love and connect with you on a deep level. And so in talking with Wyatt, one of the things that we came back to is that when you're putting out your content, so regardless of where you are right now in your journey, I believe everybody should be putting out content and documenting their journey because I think there's a lot of value in that. But instead of going onto the podcast or going onto your videos or into your tweets and prescribing what other people should do as though you are the expert, more valuable, or maybe a better perspective to take is, instead of saying what you should do, just say what you have done. Say what has worked for you. So instead of me coming on here and saying, you need to do this in your business and you need to do that, instead, I try to take the lens of, okay, here's what worked for me. Here's what I did. And it might not work for you. And I always try to hedge and say it might not, because everybody's different. And I don't always succeed at this, but I think the content that I put out that tends to resonate most deeply with people is when it comes from a position of, here's what's worked for me and maybe it will work for you. Like, here, take it. Rather than being very prescriptive and saying, here's what you need to do. And a lot of the content that I see out there in the world is very prescriptive. It's very, I'm the expert, so listen to me. Here's what you've got to do if you want to succeed. And I'm guilty of this. I'm very guilty of this. But I don't like that content. I'm trying to cut it out of my vocabulary and the way that I engage with the world, because it's disingenuous, I think, to presume that I, from my vantage point, have any idea of your context and your situation, and to say that to have any clue what you should actually do. I don't know. I'm just saying what's worked for me, and therefore maybe it will work for you, because if your situation is similar. And when you do that, it puts you above reproach. So now when people come back at you and they're like, you're an imposter, your advice is bullshit, stupid, you're dumb, you shut up. You can be like, listen, like, I'm just sharing my story. I'm just sharing what's worked for me and my experiences. You can take it or leave it. And this is one of the reasons why, I dabble. I don't dabble. I'm neck deep in the world of finance and personal development. And people are very skeptical about those industries, as they should be. There's a lot of hucksters out there. There's a lot of guru talk out there. And so when I put out a video and we play that clickbait game of, if you want to be a millionaire in 3 years, here's what you got to do, right? Like, we will play that game to get you in so that we can deliver the value, because we recognize that if there is no audience clicking on the video, we have no chance of delivering the message, which can ultimately help them. So that we get a lot of crap from people being like, oh, you're just another huckster trying to sell your thing and you're making money off the people, not off your businesses, and all that stuff. And the only reason why I feel comfortable playing in these waters is because at the end of the day, I know my intent, and I know that what I'm sharing is true because it was true for me. And therefore it might not work for you, but I'm not saying that it will. Right? I'm just sharing my perspective, my experiences. And as a result, when people are like, this is stupid, this will never work, I'm like, well, it worked for me, and I don't know if it will work for you, right? So it puts you in this unassailable position where the main thing that most people are afraid of when they're putting out content is that somebody's going to call bullshit on it. It's like, well, if you're just sharing your story and your lessons learned along the way, then nobody can do that because it's your truth. And so I encourage you to think about that for your business, for your personal brand, whatever you're trying to build out there in the world. Is don't let other people's judgments or criticisms hold you back from sharing your story, because your story is unique to you, but it's also something that we probably all can resonate with if you can find that vein that connects, right? And that's your challenge as a creator, is to figure out what are the aspects of my story that my audience can see themselves in and feel like they're part of the journey. And then maybe feel some inspiration and hope to be able to take the things that you're sharing with them and apply them to their own life and potentially improve their situation. So I wanted to share that with you guys because it's one of the things I seeing hold most people back is this fear of like the imposter syndrome, people telling them that they're doing it all wrong. So just simply, instead of saying, here's what you should do, start changing that conversation to, here's what worked for me. And see how much easier it is to create when you do it from that perspective. Because even internally, like, even as I say it, like those words, here's what you should do, it like makes me feel dirty. But as soon as I say, here's what worked for me, it becomes light. It becomes easy to share because all I'm doing at that point is sharing my experiences. So As always, guys, I appreciate you being here and sharing this experience with me. It means a lot to me, truly. If you have a moment and you haven't already, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, but you haven't taken a moment to go drop a review, could you just take a moment, just a second? I know it's kind of a pain in the butt. It won't take very, very long, just a couple seconds to go leave a review on Spotify or iTunes or YouTube or wherever you found this. Just leave a comment. It really does help with the algorithm and pushing this podcast out to the world. And that's our goal, is like to make, amplified impact and help as many entrepreneurs as possible on their journey and make them hopefully not feel so alone. And so if you think that this podcast is worthwhile and something worth sharing, then I encourage you, please, to go leave a review, leave a comment, and just know that I appreciate you guys for being here and sharing your time with me. It means a lot, truly. So I look forward to seeing you guys back here tomorrow. But until then, as always, stay hyper-focused, my friend.